Welcome in, everybody. It is the Doug Collins podcast on a brand new week, and we are delighted to be stepping in today for Doug Collins, Keefer, and Terre Quillian. We're going to have a fantastic show. We're going to look at the news from the weekend that everybody's talking about, reacting to in a little bit different way, asking some questions that need to be asked. We will have all of that, a fantastic show. Stay right where you are. We'll get it cranked up in just a moment.
Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now, in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy, is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels as the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals, $25. There's 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the My Pillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins.
Welcome back, everybody, the Doug Collins podcast. My name is Kip Keefer. My partner is Terre Quillian. We are excited to be here today to host the show in Doug's absence, and hopefully bring you some perspectives and some insights that maybe you haven't considered. Of course, over the weekend, the attack by Iranian forces in terms of a barrage of different drone strikes, cruise missiles, different things into Israel, mostly defended effectively by both Israeli defenses, U.S. and coalition partners, knocked down a lot of that attack. But it's been the reaction afterwards, and some things Terre and I want to touch on today that are questions I think that all Americans should be asking. And Terre, I think the best question to get kicked off today is to put to you, indisputably, Iran is the largest sponsor of terrorism and chaos and upheaval in the world. It's been that way. They've been our constant enemy since the 1970s. Why in the world shouldn't every American be asking why the Obama administration before and the Biden administration now, which de facto is the third term of the Obama administration, seemingly, why are they continuing this just relentless effort to include Iran in a diplomacy situation, in a cooperative situation? And the big question is, why are we lifting sanctions and unfreezing accounts and getting Iran into the business of being rich again and being able to propagate all of this when Donald Trump left the stage, leaving them basically broke and irrelevant.
Kip, I have to go back to the old adage of follow the money. I cannot understand why we would want to go back to the Iranian nuke deal that allowed the unfreezing of over $10 billion in assets for Iran. And we also were paying approximately $1.2 billion per hostage to Iran in the Biden administration. Why? Like, why would we be letting that money go to the largest state supporter of terrorism? And this isn't news. The Biden administration knows that they're the largest state supporter of terrorism. They know that. So, you have to wonder when you look at the corruption in the Biden administration, just to start with, did all of that money go to Iran? Did any of that money get siphoned off somewhere else? You can't come up with a logical reason to empower Iran. There's really not a logical reason to do that.
And shouldn't every American be saying, what's the end game here? Why are we doing this? It's so obvious to anybody with a functioning brain that you don't lift the sanctions and the restrictions and the access to billions of dollars that were put into place to get them under control and take them off the world stage. You basically had completely destroyed ISIS in the Trump administration. The Middle East was on the verge of diplomatic relations with Israel and several major countries, including UAE and Saudi Arabia. They were on the verge of establishing diplomacy and embassies in each other's countries and even daily flights back and forth. And all that now, because Iran is back in their usual role as the chief villain in this plot. Why are we facilitating that?
It's really crazy. And as always, I love Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. He says that what is happening is that Joe Biden is caving to the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. And,
exactly.
And you have to wonder if that's not true. So here, Kip, okay, so 300 attacks on Israel. And sadly, so far that we know, only one casualty, which was a young 7-year-old Bedouin girl, which is just heartbreaking to hear about. Oh. But it's a massive fail for Iran, massive win for the Israeli Defense Forces and the coalition forces. What I don't understand is I can understand privately Joe Biden telling Bibi Netanyahu, hey, take the win. Let's not escalate this. Don't go after Iran. Don't retaliate. You tell him privately that. I might disagree with that strategy, but you could understand that. Why do you leak that publicly? And then, Kip, just overnight, David Cameron, the former failed prime minister of the UK, who's now their foreign defense secretary, David Cameron comes out and publicly tells Netanyahu, do not strike back at Iran. What's the point of this? Why are we doing this? Why are we emboldening Iran intentionally? I don't understand.
Well, just logically, Terry, the next question would be if the United States had just sustained an attack from any enemy, if Great Britain had been in that same situation, do you think countries would be advising the United States that now don't retaliate, just take this and let's find a diplomatic solution? I don't think that would be our response.
Well, actually, we had a diplomatic solution during the Trump administration.
Absolutely.
We had a diplomatic solution. We had cut the head off the snake of Iran. They were impoverished. Iran did not have the money to be supporting terrorists around the globe. By unfreezing those assets and sending billions of dollars to Iran, that has us on the verge of war. So in the Trump administration, he was very clever in using economic sanctions to throttle Iran. And so now we have Biden saying that, well, the reason he's saying this to Israel is that he wants to de-escalate the situation. The situation was de-escalated. It was under control until they lifted all those sanctions off of Iran.
Terry, we need to get into what, I guess cut to the chase here because the other real question that's on my mind, and I'm sure anybody who's paying attention to this, and I know it's got to be top of your mind, is that you mentioned follow the money. That makes perfect sense because that usually is the trail that's going to lead you to the truth 99.9% of the time. But so much of this, in my opinion, is just political maneuvering. It is a desperate attempt, like we've seen from this bunch before, that anything is in play in terms of keeping control and power, because to keep that control and power is to ensure the continuing flow of monies, which is at the bottom line the reason that this obsession with there's nothing beyond their reach that they won't do to stay in office. And right now, the handwriting's on the wall. That's not going to happen unless extreme measures are taken.
Yeah, Kip, one of the things that really concerns me about this is that new polling out this morning, and I know polling, it all depends, but Real Clear Politics, with a poll that is including Robert Kennedy in the poll, shows Trump up dramatically over Biden. They are panicking on the Biden election team. First of all, originally there was a question, is Robert Kennedy's candidacy going to hurt Biden or Trump more? And you could make an argument for either side. That was until Robert Kennedy named Nicole Shanahan as his running mate. So when Robert Kennedy names a far left environmental activist as his running mate, that's bad news for the Biden campaign, because now it's very clear that the Robert Kennedy votes are going to be coming predominantly from the Democrat base. They're predominantly going to be hurting Joe Biden. And then if that wasn't dangerous enough, 4 days ago, Cornel West, in his independent bid, which I don't think anybody was paying much attention to, however, he names Melina Abdullah, who is an executive with Black Lives Matter and a Muslim activist, as his running mate. All of a sudden, Michigan and Minnesota are not looking so good for the Biden reelection campaign. Kip, I seriously worry about a wag the dog scenario here. I really wonder, does the Biden administration really want to turn the dial down on world tension right now? Or does escalating conflict and chaos look like something positive to them because the status quo is not working for them?
So, Terry, let's get into an area that a lot of people probably haven't considered, and these are the questions that we need to ask today, because you and I have a long history of broadcasting and analysis, and you just to acquaint people, have worked in 2 presidential administrations, George W. Bush and Donald Trump. So you're not an outsider. You know how everything operates. But what you just suggested, some younger listeners may not be familiar with the movie. I guess that was probably from the late 80s or 90s, called
Yeah,
Wag
I'm
the
showing
Dog.
my boomer self is coming through
Exactly.
with me referencing Wag the Dog.
But what today's referencing is a movie that suggested that creating conflicts and really kind of cooking up different news stories to distract the public was the way that this theatrical administration was approaching the election, which they had very little chance to win. Sometimes life imitates art, and in this case, that could be because I think what you're saying is what I said in the intro. You can't put anything past these people. I mean, look at what happened in 2020, and we don't need to rehash all of that, but let's just say that a very conveniently timed world pandemic, which is coming apart at the seams every time we get a new piece of information here 4 years later, completely altered a lot of the patterns of election procedures and voting and counting, and resulted in the results that we ultimately had. And you're suggesting, I think, and I agree, nothing is beyond these people's realm of imagination if it means keeping power.
Right. And I'm not saying this is what they are doing. I'm just saying that I'm going to be open to all possible scenarios that could be going on here, because I do not believe the Biden team is going to go quietly into that good night. I think as we get closer and closer to November, the situation becomes more and more dangerous. And you have to wonder, with the millions of illegal immigrants that the Biden administration has facilitated flowing into this country. And you and I did a show a couple of weeks ago where I was down on the border and we were seeing who was coming across. Lots of Russian and Chinese military aged men waiting on that bridge to come across the border. You have to wonder, what's the likelihood of a terrorist strike in the United States between now and the election in November? And who benefits from that? Does Trump benefit by being able to say, look, the country is less secure and less stable? Or do extreme measures get taken by the Biden administration? I mean, Kip, in the past, even in the middle of the Civil War, we still held elections. But you do wonder, if World War III gets stirred up, is there a chance that there will be an attempt to cancel or postpone the election in November? I wonder.
By the party who's fearing a threat to democracy? Oh,
That's
never.
Right.
But you mentioned something recently. You just can't put anything past these people. You could be in a world conflict. You've got Christopher Wray every week for the last month going to Congress to testify at various hearings, saying we are under serious threat from the people that we know are in this country, that we don't know who they are or where they are, but we know they're here, which is just astounding to me, because this is the FBI director, the lead law enforcer in the Department of Justice, and in the administration he's serving in, where they've just let people pour indiscriminately into this country, and really not even done a thorough job of the people who really wanted to get in. They talk about getaways. These are people that wanted to get away because they needed to get away, because they've got long resumes, because we've accosted enough of them to know that a lot of bad actors are in this country. But is it out of the realm of possibility that martial law or something along those lines could be imposed and say, we're not in position to hold elections here because we're in an emergency situation?
I mean, we had a pandemic where a virus was enough that people could not go in person to vote. And we had all kinds of crazy voting strategies where you were stuffing ballot boxes and basically drive-by voting. So we've seen that happen just based on a virus. What happens if there's an escalating conflict? And what happens if the United States is in the middle of that conflict? It worries me. And I want to talk about it, not to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, but I want to talk about it so that if steps start happening toward that, we have already announced we see what you're doing. I think that's the best way to prevent it from happening.
Let's get back to the roots of this thing, because when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, there are lots of documented evidence and reports that one of the first things he did before even taking the oath of office was to pen a letter to the officials in Iran and say, and it's viewed now by some historians and analysts as almost the Richard Nixon détente reach out to China from the late 1960s and early 70s, where there had been no relations, there had been adversarial situations. But apparently Obama reached out immediately before he even took office to Iran and said, we need to sit down and work out relations and reestablish our countries, as cooperative entities and whatnot. Iran already, had adopted a serious policy of death to America, and America's the great Satan. And Barack Obama was driven by some force to try and really take the emphasis away from our chief Middle East ally, which of course has been Israel since its founding in 1948, and really kind of turn the tables and start to emphasize relations with Iran, a country that is kind of an outlier in the Middle East. A lot of people don't realize a lot of the other Middle Eastern countries can't stand Iran. They have different varieties of Islamic situations, the Sunnis and the Shiites, and it's a very it's not a kumbaya united Arab nation against Israel. It's Iran basically wanting to be at that mantle. And this dates back, Terry, to ancient history, where the Persian Empire was the most imposing and dominant force in the world. And a lot of people were sustained invasions from Persia. Persia even spread into Egypt and a lot of the civilizations of the time. So this has been an ongoing thing for centuries and centuries, that these people want to impose this totalitarian system of total control. And it's amazing to me, and you wonder, and I don't know if there's a link here. I'm going to sound a little conspiracy oriented, but Valerie Jarrett has been the chief advisor of the Obamas for a number of years. She was born in Iran. You wonder if, and she's of American parents who were working there in Shiraz, Iran, but you wonder if there's some kind of lurky link that we don't know about, because I can't think of another reason why the Obamas are so engaged with continuously trying to negotiate treaties. This whole nuclear deal thing was the worst one-sided deal ever, which allowed him to release $200 billion that were frozen to kind of get them back in the game before he left office. Trump shut all that down when he came in. But there's just a real mystery here that some responsible journalist needs to unravel.
Well, Kip, there's a sad thing that is here as well. And one of the things, opinion that really changed for me when I lived briefly in London was I came to have many Persian friends. And these were folks from Iran who were not supportive of the mullahs. Yes, they were Muslim, not supportive of the radical mullahs who are ruling Iran. So the hope for Iran, I do not believe that the majority of the Iranian people support these mullahs. The problem is that previously, all of the money and all of the arms are concentrated in the forces of the mullahs. So the best way to give the Iranian people a chance to overthrow that government is to strangle the hold the mullahs have with money. And that's what Donald Trump did with economic sanctions. And that was the best chance that the Iranian people had to be able to break the stranglehold that the current mullah regime has. So I don't think the Iranian people altogether are an evil people at all. I think the regime of the mullahs is. And I think that when we enrich and support that regime, we hurt the Iranian people when we do this.
You know, it's been reported for months, even years now, that the Iranians are actively pursuing the ability to have a nuclear weapon. And I don't know where analysts get this information, but every month, every 6 weeks, you get an update where they're closer and closer. Do you think they would hesitate for 1 minute to launch a nuclear strike on Israel to accomplish their stated goal to eradicate that and wipe it off the face of the earth?
Kip, it's very interesting. I was listening to a former general in the U.S. Army this morning who was saying that he had absolutely no doubt if the Iranians currently had a nuclear weapon that was functional, that they would have launched it at Israel. He had absolutely no question that they would have done that. Again, I don't want to get into a war with Iran. Trump had it exactly right. You cut off all their money. You turn them into a paper tiger, and peace is breaking out all over the Middle East. Now we have the opposite thing happening, and the Biden administration is acting like this is all out of their control. No one had any idea that this would happen. Seriously, you send hundreds of billions of dollars to Iran, and you're surprised that terrorism is on the rise? Really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And John Kirby, who is kind of he has been deployed all weekend on the weekend shows, telling people that, yeah, we've released a lot of funds, but they don't have any control of that in terms of channeling that to terrorism. All of that money that was unfrozen from the Korean accounts that they had in South Korea, that Biden engineered recently, hundreds of billions of dollars. They don't have control of that. That goes straight to humanitarian situations, which is laughable because the next day after they announced that originally, the Ayatollah declared, that's our money. We're getting it back, and we can spend it any way we want. And even in a congressional hearing last week, an administration official admitted that those payments are not made directly to humanitarian outfits. They go right to the Iranian government. So they're contradicting their own propaganda with lower level people, while John Kirby says that's laughable that anybody thinks that the money we released is being channeled to terrorists and to threats against Israel. I think it's comical that he's trying to sell that banana.
I think it is very comical. We're going back, folks. We're going back into old movies. We're back in Eddie Murphy here with "Are you buying that banana?" The thing that I think is ridiculous is the same folks who believe that the Iranian money is all going to humanitarian aid. That's brought to you by the same people that believe that you can send aid to the Palestinian Authority in Gaza and it's not going to Hamas. That aid dollars from the U.S. are actually going to the people, when the reports on the ground overwhelmingly show that Hamas steals all that money. And when we send aid directly in the form of food, Hamas takes over that aid and then sells it at greatly inflated prices to the residents in Gaza.
Yeah, and this has been going on again. It's another misnomer out there, and really disinformation that the poor residents of Gaza, all of the regular people, the innocent, I like the word innocent that they use, of the population of Gaza and those territories, who initially actually elected Hamas representatives who quickly then completely absorbed that government and has run that region now since the 70s. These people have been put in place, maybe not intentionally to take over for good, but they are firmly in control, and they have had a campaign for 30 years, 40 years to indoctrinate citizens of Gaza that the number one reason that all of them get up in the morning and exist is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. That is their stated goal. It is amazing. On October 7th, 1,400 Israeli civilians in their homes at a musical show, just walking the streets, were senselessly and brutally and I'm uncomfortable even listing the atrocities of that particular event. It's almost like, well, that was justified because of what Israel is doing to the poor people of the Gaza region. Terry, any man on the street that you stop up there, I'm talking like acting like it's just north of here. But if you go to Gaza and talk to any person on the street, they're going to launch into a whole situation of Israel's evil and they're the root of all of our problems and they need to be destroyed and eradicated. And this is John Q. Citizen in that region's opinion. So these are not just people sheltering and shuddering in the corner, innocent folks. This is a movement that is countrywide pretty much. And, I'm not saying every single man, woman, and child, but I would say the overwhelming majority is rooting these people on.
Well, and then that is getting amplified by the Biden administration. Again, during the Trump years, we had Arab countries lining up to do business with Israel, Arab countries lining up to reestablish diplomatic relationships with Israel. We saw the first flights from Arab countries direct to Tel Aviv. As peace was breaking out all over. Well, we can't have that.
Oh, absolutely not.
And the idea that Joe Biden is telling Bibi Netanyahu whether to strike or not strike, and then saying out loud so that the enemies of Israel can hear it, if you do go and if you do attempt to reciprocate and to retaliate against Iran, we, the United States, are not going to support you. It's one thing if you are not going to be involved in that, not have U.S. arms and U.S. soldiers involved. It's another thing to tell Israel's enemies that ahead of time. And now we've got idiot David Cameron out there mimicking it and saying the same thing. Can you imagine what it's like to be Bibi Netanyahu right now?
Or just an Israeli citizen. Your greatest ally who's been lockstep with Israel since its formation, the United States of America. Israel's been our partner in the Middle East, stands for democracy. And that's another question I want to pose to you in a minute. But this has been just an unbreakable bond that they've counted on forever, and we've counted on for stability in that region. And here, because of politics, because of money, because of unforeseen forces deep in the shadows that we don't understand, all of a sudden they're standing pretty much alone now, because our country, even though Kirby was quick to say, well, we were very active in knocking down a lot of this with our defense systems and our warships and our planes. The United States was in partnership with Israel to divert this attack. That's all fine. I think that's the least we can do if we're actually remotely interested in stability in the region. But the bottom line is, if I'm an Israeli citizen or Benjamin Netanyahu this morning, I'm kind of walking around in shock that America's just abandoned us at the time where all these years leading up to this is what they counted on, our support. And now we're waffling. And I think a lot of the reason is political.
Oh, Kip, I don't think BB's in shock at all, because as you've pointed out, who is really pulling the strings? Who's running things in the Biden administration? For those of us who believe that Barack Obama is active behind the scenes, this was exactly the way Barack Obama was treating Netanyahu back during the Obama administration. The only difference was we weren't sending billions of dollars to Iran. But I can recall when Netanyahu was visiting the White House, and during dinner, instead of including the prime minister in dinner at the White House, he was left sitting in a corridor outside the kitchen. Do you remember that on that state visit?
For several hours, supposedly.
He was horrible, the disrespect with which Netanyahu was treated. So actually, this probably is not a big surprise to Bibi Netanyahu, because I think he is a very smart man, Harvard educated. I don't think he believes Joe Biden is running the Biden administration, and he's dealt with the Obama administration and Valerie Jarrett before.
And it's the same actors. You got the Blinkens and the Sullivans and all these Obama advisors, Rice and all these people that surrounded President Obama are in the Biden inner circle. How much too, Terry, does it have to do with once again, this is about power and control. Israel had recent elections where they kind of threw out a lot of these leftist sort of progressive movement people that had managed to get into office and were kind of cluttering up the works in the Israel that the average citizen imagines their country to be. And in recent elections, the conservative government, by almost a 70% margin, was reestablished in the Knesset in Israel, which returned Netanyahu to power. And this kind of great step in that direction, which seems to be looming on the horizon here, if you look at polling and you kind of read the tea leaves, that we are kind of positioned without any kind of major interference to have the same kind of movement in this country. Okay, we've tried the progressive stuff. We know now that it's just all a big farce. All these alleged emergencies like climate change and all of the different things that they're selling. All of the lack of economic opportunities for a lot of their voter bases, their abandonment of blue collar workers, it all was looming on the horizon to shape up just like Israel. And when Chuck Schumer, stands up in the Senate, makes a speech, well, the only thing I can see is Israel's out of control. We're calling for new elections. So that the party of the threat to democracy is saying, throw out Netanyahu and his government. They're conservative. They've got to go. It's time for Israel to have new elections, even though they just had an election 2 years ago.
Yes. And what business is it of the United States? And how really horrid for anyone in Congress to be advocating the overthrow of the government of one of our allies. I mean, this is just unprecedented. And, Kip, things that have been happening as a result of the Hamas wing, as John Kennedy would say, of the Democrat Party, many of those things have gone unremarked upon for the average American. Like, I wonder if most people know that just the week of April the 5th, Nancy Pelosi and 30 other Democrats sent a letter to Biden basically begging him to stop the transfer of F-35 fighters to Israel. Now, those F-35 fighters, which are the ones that were already in Israel, were what were used to keep these 300 attacks on Israel from hitting home. But you don't hear much right now about the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, Nancy Pelosi was arguing against sending any further weaponry to Israel because of Israel's horrible strikes in Gaza and the fact that Israel did inadvertently kill civilians. Well, since Hamas uses civilians as shields, it's really easy to inadvertently kill civilians. You've got to wonder who's at fault for that.
Well, here's another thing too that people absolutely need to be aware of, that every time you hear numbers quoted from Gaza on casualties of civilians, the innocent people of Gaza, these are being distributed by the Ministry of Health, which is a term that it's absolutely laughable. The Ministry of Health in Gaza, in this Hamas-controlled territory, the Ministry of Health should be named the Hamas Propaganda Bureau, because they have nothing to do with health. They have no concern with the welfare of the people, like you mentioned. Those people are just pawns because all of their infrastructure is set up in residential neighborhoods, in some cases, even in residential housing. The main headquarters for Hamas underneath the largest hospital underground in Hamas, or in Gaza. So the bottom line is, the Ministry of Health is maybe the most ridiculous title. And for anybody to say, well, the ministry, and I see it on local news especially, where they just get a press release and they just read the teleprompter, or some anchor who couldn't tell you within 10,000 miles where Gaza and Israel even are on the globe will read a report. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, 1,100 civilians were killed in Israeli attacks this morning. That is just a total BS number.
Well, the Ministry of Health feels a lot like the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's
1984. Yes.
1984, doesn't it? And again, it's really interesting to me that before President Trump was elected in 2016, the calls from the left were that Trump was going to get us into World War III. Trump was going to be a warmonger, that we were going to have conflicts across the globe because of Donald Trump. Well, now you don't have to guess what will happen under Donald Trump, because guess what did not happen from 2016 to 2020? We did not have new wars started anywhere that the United States was involved in at all. Look at the difference in the situation that was handed to Joe Biden in 2020 and where we are right now in 2024. I do not want the United States in more foreign wars. And Kip, our military has never been at a lower level of readiness except at the conclusion of the Civil War. Since the conclusion of the Civil War, this is the worst shape the U.S. military has ever been in. We are down 43,000 recruits. During the Trump years, do you know that we had U.S. recruiting stations that were having to turn people away, able-bodied men and women that were coming into the recruitment centers wanting to sign up. And it was like, we don't have a spot for you right now. We don't have openings in the U.S. military. Right now, we're down 43,000 people. We have made DEI be the most important thing in the U.S. military, whereas in the past, the U.S. military was the ultimate meritocracy. And actually, it's one of the reasons that it afforded opportunities to many people who would otherwise not have those opportunities in America to rise up. The meritocracy in the American military allowed you, regardless of your last name or your skin color or what school you graduated from or didn't graduate from, would allow you to move upward. Now it's no longer a meritocracy. Now we're more worried about DEI, and that is going to be the strength. You know what? When the missiles start flying, DEI doesn't cut it.
No, not at all. we're reaching the point to try to wrap it up here, but I hope we've raised some points and some questions in some people's minds, because I'm sure that anybody following the situation is asking the same questions. So I'm glad we were able to verbalize some of that today. Terry, our experiment, our kind of bold step out that our founding fathers initiated, based on the lifeblood of and the backbone of that being the U.S. Constitution. A lot of the things that are happening now, our forefathers in the late 1700s foresaw some of the weaknesses and some of the things that could kind of crumble the infrastructure of individual liberty and a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And if we want to preserve this system and our individual liberties against, and I don't want to be too general here, but going all the way back to the Carter administration, when Zbigniew Brzezinski was named his foreign affairs advisor, immigrant from Eastern Europe, his daughter now, Mika Brzezinski, famously Mrs. Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe. But he was making speeches and writing articles at that time 50 years ago about America being inappropriately blessed with all of this good fortune while the rest of the world was suffering in poverty and destitution. And he was calling at that time for the, quote, new world order, where all of us join hands as a global community and live in everlasting peace and harmony. It's this ridiculous kind of vision for what the world could and should be, it's never gone away. And now I truly believe, and I want to get your reaction to this as we start to wind down, I believe this is what at the center of all of what's happening with us here in this country, that people with the money and the power now to manipulate those kind of events, still trying to reach that kind of goal. And the only way that is going to be achieved is to basically neuter and change the United States of America and to completely usurp our Constitution. What are your thoughts on that as a kind of a broad topic? But I think it's probably at the root of everything we're witnessing.
Well, and Kip, what's so ridiculous about it is that the global kumbaya moment did come. It came during the Trump administration when we had peace breaking out across across the world. So we had that. We had a more peaceful world. We did not have Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine. We did not have Hamas sending terrorists in early October to Israel. We did not have these conflicts. We had peace breaking out across the globe. So if you want a new world order, what they want is not global kumbaya, but for America not to be in the lead. Part of the reason we had global kumbaya is because under President Trump, the United States was ascendant, and the United States was clearly in the global leadership position in those days. So that peace through strength, the old doctrine, once again, the hostages were taken by Iran during Jimmy Carter's administration. They were released on the eve of Ronald Reagan's inauguration.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. Peace through strength works every time it's tried, and peace through weakness is never successful.
Terry, for democracy, which the great defenders who want to keep people off ballots and keep candidates in courtrooms and put them in jail, our system of representative republic government, constitutionally based, of the people, by the people, for the people, only works if the citizens are active participants in the process. It's your government. It's not theirs. Your voices need to be heard. You need to ask the questions that we're asking. And they've done the people that want to change everything have done a remarkable job of intimidating citizens to not let their voices be heard. We've got to get to the point as a country, and the best place those voices could resoundingly be heard is at the ballot box this November. Hopefully we can get to that and have a free and fair election that they supposedly endorse, because that's the only way things are going to change.
Absolutely, 100%. And for everyone that gets upset, aggravated, whatever, my first question to them is, well, how much did you send? And friends will look at me and go, what? That doesn't make any sense, Terry. What's that question? I was like, how much did you send? What? How much did you send to the Trump campaign this week? You can go to donaldjtrump.com and donate. Doesn't matter if it's $10, $25, whatever. So instead of just being angry, we have to be registering voters. We have to be working with the effort that Scott Pressler has really been showing leadership on to get voters to the polls this November. And in addition to that, not just be aggravated, but be engaged to donate, to sign up, to help, to make a change happen this November.
Because just remember, one of the best weapons they have is indifference. And how many people do you talk to, Terry, that say, oh, I don't watch any of the political stuff. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to think about it. That's playing right into the hands of people that want to take away your liberties and freedoms.
Well, it's overwhelming. I can understand why people feel that way. Kip, you and I do a sports show during college football season. And I will say that it's definitely less anxiety producing not to be following the news of the day. Following the news of the day does cause anxiety, but we need to change that situation so that that's not the case.
Yeah, because you're helping the other side by being indifferent. It's time. If you like the audacious experiment that is America, if you support the Constitution, and I like to say that I'm not necessarily, I am America first, but I'm Americans first. I want all my American brothers and sisters. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your religion is. If you believe in this country and this concept, you need to step up front and center and get involved. All of us need to put our shoulder to the wheel and make this happen. Terry,
Yes,
this has been great. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Want to thank Doug Collins for allowing us to sit in today. His great producer, James, making it all possible. What's your final thoughts?
Mike, I was just going to say the same thing, that we appreciate Doug making this opportunity available to us, and we appreciate the audience of the Doug Collins Show so much.
And you can look for Terry and I on Twitter. Terry is all caps, TQ Today at, I'm going to mess the dress
it's
up.
at
Why don't you
TQ
say it?
Today.
Hey, that's right. I always put the at in the wrong place. At TQ Today, I'm at Kip Keefer Radio. You can follow us there and see where our show opportunities are. If you like what you heard today, we would certainly love to have an opportunity to communicate with all of you in the future. Thank you again, everybody, with the Doug Collins podcast. And thank you, James, for making it all happen. Terry Quillian and Kip Keefer signing off today. God bless the great United States of America.